to obtain, and Dr. Freud, even in old age, retained a fighting spirit. But in March 1938, the Gestapo appeared at Freud's home and left, taking Anna with them. Concern for his daughter was the event that broke Freud's will. When Anna came back the same day, Freud agreed to emigrate. Influential friends in France and England bribed the Nazis for Freud's safe passage out of Austria. On June 4, 1938, Freud, Martha, and Anna were able to leave Vienna. Freud's own words best express his most poignant escape.
The feeling of triumph on being liberated is too strongly mixed with sorrow, for in spite of everything, I still greatly love the prison from which I have been released.
Freud died in London in 1939, 15 months after leaving Vienna.
This is one of these dreams where I don't know how it began, how it ended. All I remember is that I was sitting on top of a roof with several other people, and I was holding the hand of this little girl, maybe 5 or 6-year-old girl. And we were all listening to this piano music, which was coming from nowhere. We were listening, and as soon as a certain melody in the music appeared, the girl turned into a bird, and she starts to float away. So I have to hold her tight so that she won't leave me. That's my dream.
Much recent criticism of Freud's ideas has centered upon his rigidly ordered view of the mind and the constant struggles among the id, ego, and superego. Research now suggests that rather than continually competing with each other, the different personality components actually coexist as partners.
Dreams are much less important, even in psychoanalysis, than they used to be. In fact, I think a lot of the impetus for dream interpretation today comes from patients who expect that that ought to be part of the therapy and who, unasked, bring in dreams. And I don't know whether that is a matter of fashion or a matter of technique. I mean, psychotherapy today is so focused on concrete circumstance and external circumstance, and it's so much pressing for quick change that it may be that the dream is not the royal road or the best avenue toward the kind of information that therapists want to deal with.
The future of psychotherapy has become uncertain due to the increasing success of drugs in the treatment of disorders from depression to schizophrenia.
There is unquestionably a place for psychopharmacological treatment of emotional disturbances, and Freud from the very beginning speculated that there might be in the future chemical treatments for some of the conditions which he had to treat with psychoanalysis.
This man who spent his life imploring patients to tell him their troubles was less anxious to confess his own story. We will probably never know why Freud destroyed many letters and documents. Perhaps he thought some things were better left unread.
I was lying there, and there were thousands of snakes and of spiders. They were coming near.
Freud was a very vigorous speculator. A lot of his speculation, from our perspective, is just wrong. His view of women is maybe in some ways progressive for its day, but not generous by our standards, not reasonable by our standards, just wrong. Certainly the case can be made that many sorts of people have been injured by the application of Freudian theory. Biographers today are making the case that Freud did not act in good faith in certain circumstances. Of course, he did so many things that even if he very largely acted in good faith, there would be important areas where he might not have been. He was an ambitious, driven man. He was a contentious, sort of cantankerous person, generous in certain ways as well. And I think it is a tribute to how large and influential he is that every aspect of his personality has come under scrutiny.
Despite his detractors, our culture has found Freud and his unsettling vision of the mind compelling enough to argue about for close to a century. His ghost is not an easy one to live with.
Many of us find ourselves in situations throughout our lives where we don't know who we are and what we need to do. Freud's response to that is, make sense of your past. Find a way of making meaning out of who you have been and where you have come from. That is a way of giving yourselves more possibilities in the future, so that our choices in the present are richer, more complex, more nuanced, and, in a word, more free, because we now have an interpretation of the past. The interpretation of dreams was Freud's way of making sense of the past through signs or symptoms that people thought were meaningless. Whether or not one takes the dream as the royal route to the unconscious, it seems to me the lesson of this great book is that we make sense of our pasts because we need to be more free in the present when we have intense, sometimes painful conflict.
Perhaps not so much has changed since Dr. Freud invited us to lie down on the couch. We still understand only the smallest fragments of the human mind and its dreams. At the very least, Sigmund Freud encouraged us to examine ourselves. The analysis session is not over.